Evil has been done to Africa by Western nations in the past. But what are they doing now?
I don't care if you think I'm Satan reincarnated. The fact is, you can't look at that television and say, nothing happened on the 6th.
Africans are the target of the West. They look easy to exploit.
Les personnes secourues se trouvent dans une situation d'urgence absolue. Les prévisions météo indiquent une détérioration significative du climat. Pas du tout. C'est violence.
While they don't miss a chance to insult Africans, where they are trying to fool them the most is in African nations.
21-year-old mother of one, allegedly by a British soldier in Nanyuki in 2012, is back in the limelight. British High Commissioner to Kenya, Jane Marriott, in a statement, says the UK is cooperating with investigators in order to find the truth.
In the name of protecting from violent groups, the Western soldiers have been exploiting the power they held. So, one after another, they are being thrown out. Now is Germany's turn. And it says its troops will leave Niger in August. But will they? Let's find out. On August 31st, 2024, the German army, after a long-standing presence, will withdraw from its airbase in Niger. This decision follows a string of failed negotiations with Niger's new military government, which seized power after a recent coup. This event marks a significant turning point, not just for Germany, but for all Western powers with interests in the region. But whether Germany will stick to its decision is still questioned. Why won't it? Well, you know how the West regrets leaving Africa sometimes. Not because it missed helping Africa, but because of the resources it was getting for free. Here is an image of how much uranium France took from Niger in the year 2022. Niger was the second country to give most of its resources to France. And remember, most of the mines in Niger were owned by French companies. So, free is indeed the right word. So, what do Western nations miss after leaving? These resources? Or helping Africa fight insurance? Or we must say, pretending to help Africa fight insurgents? Anyway, Niger's new government has made a bold statement by refusing to grant legal immunity to foreign troops, a move that has forced Germany and potentially other Western nations to reconsider their military presence in the country. This refusal is symbolic of a broader trend across Africa, where nations are increasingly challenging the traditional dynamics of foreign military engagements. These developments have sparked a global conversation about sovereignty, accountability, and the future of Western military influence in Africa. In simple words, Africa is saying no to Western influence, and in the 21st century is imposing yourself on someone valid. Anyway.
What are you talking about? You have the morals of an alley cat.
Let's start the in-depth analysis with a simple question. Why did Germany decide to withdraw from Niger? Before we talk about if we will stick to this decision, this one is more important. Here's a reminder to please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black culture, history, civilization, and identity. Let's continue now. The decision by Germany to end its military operations in Niger raises an immediate question. Why now? What prompted a country deeply invested in regional stability to pull out? The answer lies in a dramatic shift in Niger's political landscape and the changing priorities of its new military rulers. Germany is seen here respecting Africa's decisions. They said, if Africa does not want them, they will leave.
Shifting focus to Niger, the junta-led West African state has overhauled foreign ties since last year's coup. While it has ditched traditional Western allies, it has forged ties with new partners.
Coming out of Niger, German army will end its operation at the airbase that is located in Niger. They are pulling out, they are withdrawing, and the date that they have given is August.
After the military coup that ousted President Mohamed Bazoum, Niger's new government made it clear that it was no longer willing to operate under the same agreements that had governed the country's relations with Western powers. Central to this shift was the issue of legal immunity for foreign troops, a provision that had allowed Western soldiers to operate with broad legal protections, often shielding them from local laws. For the new regime in Niger, this arrangement was untenable. They demanded that foreign troops be held accountable under Nigerian law, reflecting a broader desire to assert national sovereignty and break away from the influence of foreign powers. The insistence on legal accountability marked a significant departure from previous agreements that Western nations, including Germany, had relied on. Germany, in defense, said its military presence in Niger, part of a broader international effort to combat terrorism in the Sahel region, was critical to maintaining regional stability. The airbase served as a logistical hub for operations across West Africa, providing crucial support in the fight against extremist groups. However, the new government's refusal to grant immunity was not just a legal dispute, it was a statement of sovereignty. Niger's leaders were determined to demonstrate that their country was no longer willing to accept the terms dictated by foreign powers, especially when those terms undermined the authority of the local government. The demand for accountability reflected a broader frustration with the way foreign military operations had been conducted in Africa, where allegations of human rights abuses by foreign troops have often gone unpunished.
Germany has announced its intention to set up a military base in Niger. According to Germany's ambassador to Niger, the base will support the UN Peace Stabilization Mission in Mali, since Niger is a key country in the fight against terrorism and illegal immigration from West Africa. This announcement comes 5 months after the visit of the German Foreign Affairs Minister Frank-Walter Steinmeier in Niamey alongside his French counterpart Jean-Marc Ayrault. The two diplomats had visited Niger's anti-terrorism headquarters alongside Niger's Interior Minister Mohamed Bazoum. The German ambassador recalled his country's readiness to help solve the numerous security threats in the Sahel region, adding that German Chancellor Angela Merkel will visit Niger on a yet-to-be-announced date.
60 German soldiers would join a small EU mission set up last December with the aim of helping the country improve its logistics and infrastructure. The decision by Parliament in Berlin reinforces the continued commitment to a German presence in the Sahel region, despite the recent withdrawal from Mali.
But the days of control are over now. Germany, like many Western nations, found this new stance difficult to accept. The German military had long operated under the assumption that its troops would be immune from local prosecution, a safeguard seen as essential to its operations. Without this protection, the risks of stationing troops in Niger became too great. The breakdown in negotiations ultimately forced Germany's hand, leading to the decision to withdraw. The significance of this withdrawal extends beyond Niger. It is part of a broader trend where African nations are increasingly asserting their sovereignty and demanding that foreign powers respect their laws and institutions. This shift in dynamics challenges the traditional model of foreign military engagement in Africa, where Western nations have often operated with a level of impunity that has bred resentment among local populations. The German withdrawal from Niger, therefore, is not just a response to a specific legal issue, but a reflection of a changing political environment in Africa. As more countries assert their sovereignty and demand accountability, Western powers are being forced to rethink their strategies and adjust to a new reality where their influence is no longer guaranteed.
After visiting Mali, Germany's top diplomat Annalena Baerbock was in Niger as part of her tour to strengthen her country's relations with leaders in the Sahel region. In the capital Niamey, Baerbock met with President Mohamed Bazoum, and they mainly discussed about terrorist attacks in the country and climate change, particularly precious in the eyes of the Green Party politician. As German Foreign Minister, I'm very pleased that in addition to the major issue of climate protection, where we as Germany want to provide strong support in the next few years and also want to support security, that education is such a major topic for the President. We will also provide support because education is the most important thing for young people.
Fortunately, or unfortunately, Germany doesn't need to tire itself with all this now. Now is the right time to pack bags and leave. While Niger has completely gone from welcoming the foreign minister to throwing the troops out, one question remains. Are other African nations doing the same? The situation in Niger is far from unique. Across Africa, the issue of legal immunity for foreign troops has sparked debates and tensions. Countries like Kenya, which has hosted British military forces for decades, are now grappling with the consequences of these long-standing arrangements. So, how are these nations responding to the challenges posed by foreign military presence on their soil? In Kenya, the presence of British troops has been a double-edged sword. On one hand, the British military has provided valuable training and support to Kenyan forces, helping to bolster the country's capacity to deal with security threats. On the other hand, the presence of foreign troops has led to numerous incidents that have strained relations between the two countries. The most significant of these issues revolve around the legal immunity granted to British soldiers, which has prevented them from being held accountable for their actions under Kenyan law. The ongoing public inquiry in Kenya has brought these issues to the forefront. The inquiry, which has heard testimonies from numerous individuals alleging mistreatment by British troops, highlights the complexities of hosting foreign military personnel. One of the most disturbing cases involves a young woman who was killed by a British soldier over a decade ago, yet justice remains elusive. Despite the availability of witnesses and evidence, the case has been stalled by the legal protections afforded to the soldier, who remains immune from prosecution in Kenya.
The story we've been following away from politics. A family of a young Kenyan woman reportedly murdered by a British soldier almost a decade ago is planning to sue the British Army to demand answers over her death. This is according to lawyers of Agnes Wajiro's family, who say their client desperately wants justice for Agnes, as well as answers to what the British Army knows. The family also wants to know why the Ministry of Defense appears to have done nothing to address the known allegations Agnes was brutally murdered at the hands of a British soldier. For almost a decade, the body of 21-year-old Agnes Wajiro was found in 2012 after she reportedly went out partying with British soldiers at a hotel in the central town of Nanyuki, where the UK Army.
This case, along with others involving accidents and negligence by foreign troops, has fueled public outrage and calls for greater accountability. The Kenyan government, much like Niger's new leaders, is now questioning the arrangements that have allowed foreign soldiers to operate with impunity. The inquiry has exposed the deep-seated frustrations among the local population, who feel that foreign troops are above the law. This sentiment is not confined to Kenya. It resonates across many African nations where foreign military bases are located. In Kenya, the inquiry has also revealed the broader impact of these legal protections on the country's sovereignty. The fact that British troops can operate without fear of prosecution undermines the authority of the Kenyan government and sends a message that foreign powers can act with impunity on African soil. This has led to growing calls for a reassessment of the terms under which foreign troops are allowed to operate in Kenya. The situation in Kenya mirrors the challenges faced by Niger and other African nations. As more countries begin to push back against the legal protections granted to foreign troops, the relationship between Africa and Western military powers is becoming increasingly strained. This strain is compounded by the fact that these legal protections are often seen as a relic of colonial-era agreements, which were designed to protect the interests of foreign powers at the expense of the host nation's sovereignty. As these countries begin to push back against these arrangements, another question emerges. What are the broader implications for Western military strategy in Africa? Firstly, a safer place for the locals. It's better to protect yourself from violent groups on your own, instead of being scared of both soldiers and insurgent groups. The withdrawal of Western troops from Niger is a clear signal that the old model of military engagement in Africa is no longer sustainable. For years, Western nations have maintained a presence in strategic locations across the continent, often under the guise of combating violence and promoting stability. However, the growing resistance to these forces from local governments indicates a shift in how African nations perceive foreign military involvement. In the case of Niger, the German withdrawal could have significant ramifications for the broader Sahel region, where multiple Western countries have deployed troops to counter the spread of extremist groups. With the exit of German forces, other Western nations may find it increasingly difficult to justify their presence in the region, especially if Niger's stance on legal immunity sets a precedent for neighboring countries. The Sahel region, which has been plagued by instability and violence, has been a focal point for Western military operations. Countries like Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger have been key partners in the fight against groups. An important question here is, how will global power dynamics shift in Africa? With Western military forces reassessing their presence in Africa, the continent is becoming an increasingly contested space in the global power struggle. As Western powers step back, other nations, most notably China and Russia, are stepping up their efforts to increase their influence. China and Russia have taken a markedly different approach to their engagement with Africa compared to Western nations. Rather than relying on military bases and foreign troops, these countries have focused on economic investments, infrastructure projects, and security partnerships that often come with fewer strings attached. This strategy has allowed them to build strong relationships with African nations, positioning themselves as alternatives to the Western powers.
On se sent en famille en ce sens que la Russie est une famille aussi pour l'Afrique. C'est une famille parce que nous avons la même histoire. La Russie a consenti d'énormes sacrifices pour libérer le monde du nazisme pendant la Seconde Guerre mondiale. Les peuples africains, nos grands-pères, ont été déportés de force aussi pour aider l'Europe à se débarrasser du nazisme.
In Niger, for example, the new military government has expressed interest in forging closer ties with non-Western powers, seeing them as more reliable partners in their pursuit of sovereignty and development. This is part of a broader trend across Africa, where countries are increasingly looking to diversify their partnerships and reduce their reliance on the West. China's Belt and Road Initiative (BRI) has played a significant role in this shift. Through the BRI, China has invested billions of dollars in African infrastructure, including roads, railways, and ports. These investments have not only provided much-needed infrastructure, but have also strengthened China's influence on the continent. African nations, eager for development and less concerned with the political conditions often attached to Western aid, have welcomed Chinese investments with open arms. Russia, too, has been expanding its presence in Africa, particularly through security partnerships. Russian private military companies such as the Wagner Group have been active in several African countries, providing security services to governments facing internal conflicts. These partnerships have allowed Russia to increase its influence in regions where Western powers have traditionally held sway. The implications of this shift are significant. As Western influence wanes, China and Russia are likely to gain more ground, potentially leading to a new era of competition for Africa's resources and strategic positions. This could result in a more multipolar world where African nations have greater leverage to negotiate terms that better align with their interests. However, many Western nations have talked about the risks involved with this alliance. They say the increasing influence of China and Russia in Africa could lead to new forms of dependency, as African nations become reliant on these powers for economic and security support. Additionally, the lack of transparency and accountability in some of these partnerships could lead to governance challenges and human rights concerns. But was it fine when the West was in Africa and killing locals?
The hypocrisy is just outrageous.
In the end, what does this mean for the people on the ground? The shifting dynamics of foreign military presence in Africa have far-reaching consequences for the people who live in the regions most affected by these forces. As Western troops withdraw and new global players step in, what does this mean for the security, stability, and daily lives of ordinary Africans? The departure of foreign troops also opens up the possibility for African nations to develop their security capabilities, free from the constraints and dependencies imposed by Western powers. This could lead to a more sustainable and locally driven approach to security, one that is better aligned with the needs and priorities of the people. In Kenya, the ongoing public inquiry has highlighted the human cost of foreign military presence, particularly when accountability is lacking. The testimonies from those affected by the actions of British troops highlight the importance of ensuring that any future military engagements, whether with Western nations or new global players, are conducted with respect for human rights and local laws. For the people on the ground, the presence of foreign troops is often a double-edged sword. On one hand, these troops can provide a sense of security and stability in regions plagued by conflict. On the other hand, the lack of accountability for their actions can lead to resentment and anger, particularly when local populations feel that they have been wronged by foreign forces. As Africa navigates this complex landscape, the key takeaway is clear. The continent's future will be shaped not just by the decisions of foreign powers, but by the agency of African nations and their people. The question is no longer whether foreign military forces will stay or go, but how Africa will seize this moment to assert its sovereignty and chart its course. So, the future of foreign military presence in Africa will depend not only on the decisions made in Western capitals, but on the resolve of African leaders and communities to shape their destiny. As the continent navigates this new era, the lessons from Niger and Kenya will be crucial in guiding the path forward. a path that prioritizes sovereignty, accountability, and the well-being of the African people. One thing we must celebrate is Germany leaving Africa. We must celebrate this because that's not a Western nation's style.
Now, with migration and security being key topics of concern here in Germany, the country's foreign minister has been in West Africa this week, seeking to strengthen Berlin's ties with partners there. Annalena Baerbock's trip took her to Senegal and Côte d'Ivoire. We'll discuss what Germany can achieve.
Here we go again. Do you think Germany will ever leave the whole of Africa? Are they waiting for each nation to force them to leave? Let us know in the comment section. Are Western nations not good with hints? Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If so, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We have decided to bring videos on something nobody talks about: the Black culture, civilization, history, and evidence about how glorious Blacks have been. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.